Comencem. Serem molt puntuals perquè tenim els nostres companys que ens acompanyen en línia. Ho haig de posar? Noves mesures. Fins ara el que parlava se la podia treure. En fi, comencem aquest acte de lliurament del Premi Internacional Linguapax. En primer lloc, excuso la presidenta de l'Institut, que ens hauria d'haver acompanyat avui. Malauradament, és una de les persones contagiades i, per tant, no ens ha pogut acompanyar avui. De tota manera, li agraeixo formalment l'acollida i tot el suport que ens està donant. Agraeixo també a la consellera d'Acció Exterior i Govern Obert que ens ha volgut acompanyar i ella sí que pot fer-ho avui i, per tant, és un plaer enorme tenir-la aquí amb nosaltres i ens sentim molt ben acollits. Vull començar la meva intervenció citant les paraules d'una de la presidenta d'una organització premiada, és l'organització Basa Bali, que va rebre el Premi Linguapax l'any 2019 i ara, quan li vaig enviar la invitació per aquest acte, em va contestar amb un correu dient que sí que es connectaria avui i em va escriure això. I cito literalment: I wanted again to let you know how much the award meant to us. The governor still has a copy of the award hanging proudly in his office, as does our local board. The award elevated us in the eyes of the community, which has enabled us to grow grammatically within Bali. The government is now publicly using Balinese and encouraging others to do so as well. And as well to replicate in other parts of Indonesia. We are replicating now in Makassar and Sulawesi. We can't thank you enough. No hi ha res més gratificant que constatar que la feina que fas té sentit i contribueix a donar veu i visibilitat als esforços de les comunitats que malden per mantenir i promoure les seves llengües. El Premi Linguapax és cada any un magnífic aparador per donar a conèixer experiències, projectes i pràctiques reeixides, la qual cosa ens permet aprendre entre tots. Aquest és un dels objectius principals de Linguapax des de fa més de 35 anys i crec que un dels nostres majors valors, posar en contacte activistes i acadèmics de diverses disciplines i articular propostes, recomanacions i projectes que ens permetin afrontar plegats el repte de conservar un planeta ric i divers i lingüísticament sostenible. I ho fem a través d'eines com el MOOC titulat Diversitat lingüística per a què?, que vam llançar l'any passat, o a través de les aportacions que fem en el marc de projectes com la Langue des Oiseaux, un projecte que ens acaba d'atorgar la Comissió Europea, i en el qual hi participem amb altres organismes de l'àmbit artístic, perquè art i llengua van de la mà i ens ajuden a créixer també culturalment. I alguns altres que estem pendents que ens atorguin. És també el coneixement que portem a través de la nostra xarxa el que ens ha permès ser organització amb estatus consultiu a la UNESCO i formar part del grup d'experts que elabora el Pla d'Acció Global per al Decenni de les Llengües Autòctones que va declarar la UNESCO fa 2 anys. A través d'aquesta col·laboració amb la UNESCO identifiquem i aportem els mitjans i les estratègies més efectives per fer visibles els valors de la diversitat a través de les experiències locals que ens proporciona la nostra xarxa de col·laboradors. I és a través d'aquesta col·laboració que creiem i esperem poder contribuir a situar a l'agenda pública dels governs i de les institucions internacionals el reconeixement de la diversitat lingüística i cultural i la seva gestió igualitària i equitativa, perquè ocupi l'espai central que li correspon. L'altra fortalesa que vull destacar o que voldria esmentar de Linguapax és el potencial que ens dona el nostre Consell Científic i la xarxa de delegacions per la capacitat que té de plantejar debats, com el que farem al final d'aquest acte d'avui, i per poder participar en el context internacional actual com a generadors de discurs. Un discurs que ens permeti no només plantejar la diversitat lingüística en termes de revitalització, sinó activar-la realment perquè es converteixi en un missatge engrescador pel futur i pel conjunt de la societat. I tanmateix, aquest interès per mantenir la riquesa lingüística del món no ens fa oblidar mai on som i on vam néixer. De manera que les llengües del nostre país, el català i l'aranès, són sempre un punt de referència per a nosaltres i són les que ens donen la perspectiva o perspectives a l'hora d'analitzar l'entorn cada vegada més divers i multicultural a la societat global on vivim. Per això ens agrada ser avui en aquesta casa i, sobretot, tenir-hi un vincle permanent. Encara que la Teresa Cabré, presidenta de l'IEC, no hi sigui, sí que vull fer aquest agraïment públic en aquesta col·laboració. I al mateix temps també ens satisfà poder participar en la mesura de les nostres possibilitats, és clar, en la política exterior del nostre país. Crec que el coneixement forjat al llarg de tants anys i la singularitat de la realitat lingüística catalana són una porta que ens projecta al món i que ens fa referents i ens n'hauria de poder fer més. Perquè en el terreny de la gestió del multilingüisme i de la promoció de les llengües petites, encara que no siguin minoritzades, és un projecte d'abast global, és un projecte d'interès global i crec que Catalunya hauria de poder ser capdavantera. Per tant, moltes gràcies, consellera, pel suport que fa anys que ens doneu des del departament i espero que puguem continuar treballant plegats. Abans de donar-te la paraula, deixa'm només 2 paraules més per agrair la feina de tot l'equip de Linguapax, la seva implicació, la qualitat de les seves aportacions i de les seves reflexions. Volia fer un esment especial a la Catiusha, que és la persona que ens coordina tots plegats. No ha arribat encara, sempre té molta feina i va molt atabalada, però igualment li agraeixo públicament. I res més. Gràcies a tots els que sou avui aquí i els que ens esteu escoltant en línia. També les vostres aportacions són imprescindibles per aquest projecte col·lectiu que ens agrupa. Moltes gràcies, consellera. Tens la paraula.
Moltes gràcies, presidenta. Moltíssimes gràcies a tot l'equip de Linguapax, que també està aquí amb nosaltres a la sala. I volia també dir hola i donar la benvinguda a totes les persones que ens estan escoltant en línia. Aquests dies sembla ser que tornarem a posar de moda els actes que són híbrids o que són en part en línia. Ja hi estem acostumats, per tant, crec que ho podrem fer de manera més ràpida i més executiva del que ho vam fer el primer cop, però em sembla que estem entrant en un format que ens acompanyarà unes quantes setmanes. Volia donar-vos les gràcies per la feina que feu de promoció, treballant en temes tan importants com la diversitat lingüística, les comunitats lingüístiques, el multilingüisme i, a més, que ens puguem trobar avui a un espai tan especial com és el de l'Institut d'Estudis Catalans, que crec que simbolitza a la perfecció també els valors que ens uneixen i que ens agrupen avui en el marc d'aquest reconeixement. I, de fet, volia felicitar molt especialment els guardonats. Moltes felicitats, benvinguts a Barcelona, benvinguts a Catalunya, benvinguts a l'Institut d'Estudis Catalans i benvinguts a aquest acte en el qual us volem oficialitzar aquest reconeixement que Linguapax us va comunicar ara fa un parell de mesos, més o menys, i que avui per fi ens podem trobar a Barcelona. L'acció exterior de Catalunya no es podria entendre de cap manera sense la participació de la societat civil i sense entendre-la com una acció exterior que va de cultura, va de llengua, va de ciència, va de política, per suposat, també, i ens uneix a tots en totes les comunitats de referència del món. Per tant, jo crec que aquest exemple i la feina que fa Linguapax i el que representa aquest reconeixement connecta profundament i estretament amb el que ha de ser l'acció exterior catalana, entenent l'acció exterior com una cosa que el govern facilita però que es fa en bona mesura també gràcies a la societat civil i a tota la tasca. Volia agrair molt a l'entitat guardonada, Idara Baraye Talim Otaraki, i perdoneu si ho he pronunciat molt malament, però he fet el meu millor intent de pronunciar el nom. I, de fet, també volia agrair molt especialment a tots els membres de la comunitat pakistanesa que ens estan també seguint online per estar a aquest acte i també per donar suport a aquest guardó i a aquesta iniciativa. És molt important la feina que fan entitats com la vostra, treballant temes de multilingüisme, de diversitat lingüística, de protecció de les comunitats lingüístiques. És una feina tremendament rellevant i, a més, en aquest cas, té un valor afegit que ho feu en el context d'aquestes llengües indígenes, de la comunitat torwali i altres minories lingüístiques del vostre país. Per tant, felicitats per la feina que feu i esperem que aquest reconeixement sigui un incentiu per seguir-la fent i seguir-la fent tan bé. La protecció de les llengües és una cosa que ens uneix, és una cosa que ens uneix a moltes comunitats del món, que tenim la necessitat de protegir-les. Aquí a Catalunya, ara fa menys d'una setmana, sortíem a manifestar-nos al carrer per protegir el català, per protegir el model d'immersió lingüística de les escoles, que és un model d'èxit, de determinats embats judicials que volen limitar-ne el seu ús. La defensa del català sempre s'ha entès com una defensa que és un consens a la societat, que es fa des de la societat civil i que el govern també ha de fer. I, de fet, jo crec que el component d'un fort involucrament del govern i de la societat civil, les dues coses són fonamentals quan es tracta de protegir la llengua, ja sigui a Catalunya o al ball pakistanès del Swat. Per tant, això diria que és una cosa que també ens uneix, en aquest cas, a tots, però especialment els que hem de lluitar pels nostres drets lingüístics i per fer valdre les llengües, que són patrimoni, que són identitat, que són cultura i que ajuden a cohesionar els pobles i els territoris. Per tant, jo crec que aquesta lluita per la protecció de la llengua també és una cosa que ens uneix i una font també d'ajuda i de reconeixement que té una dimensió internacional important, i que és important que també lluitem junts per aquestes defenses de les llengües i que ho fem també amb una dimensió internacional. Bé, jo no em volia allargar molt en aquest discurs inicial. Ara toca que rebeu formalment aquest guardó i que puguem conèixer també més feina i més detalls de la feina que feu, però sí que m'agradaria posar l'accent precisament en la dimensió internacional de la protecció de la llengua. Les Nacions Unides reconeix la diversitat, la riquesa del multilingüisme, la necessitat de protegir-ho i de promocionar-ho. La pròpia ciència, en sentit objectiu, ens diu que si som multilingües i tractem bé diferents llengües, doncs això només té impactes positius a nivell cognitiu, a nivell de producte interior brut, a nivell de qualitat de vida i a nivell de qualitat de la cultura i de perseverància de la llengua. Per tant, jo crec que estem en un escenari que, per resumir-ho molt breument, si passem a considerar els drets lingüístics drets humans, també avançarem més cap al reconeixement de les llengües, la seva protecció i la feina que hem de fer plegats internacionalment per protegir-les. Moltes felicitats als guardonats, moltes felicitats a Linguapax i moltes gràcies a totes les persones que ens acompanyen en aquest acte de reconeixement.
Gràcies, consellera. Ara donarem pas... Això de ser híbrids ens passa males passades. Ara baixarem, la consellera i jo deixarem pas a l'Enric Serra, que és el secretari de Linguapax, que ens presentarà el senyor Hamza Al-Rajà, que ens contextualitzarà una mica la comunitat pakistanesa a Catalunya i, per tant, ens donarà informació sobre com està organitzada, quins sentiments té envers les seves llengües, envers les seves cultures i com les desenvolupa, i després passarem al lliurament del diploma. Per tant, Enric i Hamza, podeu pujar si us cal.
Bé, bona tarda. És un plaer per tots nosaltres tenir avui aquí el senyor Hamza Ali Rajà. Ell és politòleg, format a la Universitat Pompeu Fabra, com comentàvem fa un moment. Ell és també màster en gestió pública per la Universitat Autònoma de Barcelona, traductor i intèrpret des de fa una bona colla d'anys i mediador intercultural per l'Ajuntament de Barcelona, amb una tasca que desenvolupa sobretot en l'àmbit del que seria l'Àsia meridional, en concret Bangladesh, l'Índia o el Pakistan, d'on ell precisament prové. En volem destacar també que ha format mestres i forma de l'Escola Catalana sobre aspectes relacionats precisament amb aquesta comunitat, la de l'Àsia meridional. Hamza Ali Rajà va arribar fa 2 dècades a Catalunya i duia una motxilla corulla de plurilingüisme. I duia l'urdú, i duia el panjabi, i duia l'anglès. En aquesta motxilla, però, hi duia encara una altra cosa potser més important que les llengües. I endevinem que hi duia la voluntat d'eixamplar permanentment la competència plurilingüe i pluricultural, una actitud d'obertura a les llengües, que ha posat a la pràctica precisament aquests darrers anys entre nosaltres a Catalunya. A casa nostra ha après el català i el castellà i ha concretat la passió per les llengües i per la nostra llengua, elaborant amb paciència, amb obsessió, amb un punt d'obsessió, diu ell en algun document, en un diccionari de català-urdú. Hem demanat a Hamza Ali pel seu coneixement sobre la qüestió, pel seu testimoni de primera mà, per la seva sensibilitat cap a les llengües i la diversitat, que ens parli avui de la relació entre la comunitat pakistanesa i les llengües. Bé, i sense més preàmbuls, el que farem és donar-li la paraula.
Moltes gràcies, Enric, per la presentació. Primer de tot, vull donar gràcies a Linguapax per convidar-me. Abans, quan la consellera parlava de la immersió lingüística, jo estava pensant, bueno, podria haver vingut aquí també com a exemple de producte d'aquesta immersió lingüística que hi ha a Catalunya, que és bastant exitosa. Bé, com que aquest any el premi li ha tocat a una entitat pakistanesa, que us felicito molt, doncs amb la Katyusha vam estar parlant que seria convenient contextualitzar una mica sobre la comunitat que viu aquí a Catalunya i com pensen, com fan les coses, quines llengües parlen, etc. I llavors em van trucar a mi i jo no vaig tenir cap dubte en dir que sí, perquè sempre intento donar una mica informació sobre la meva comunitat per trencar barreres que n'hi ha moltes. Així que us faré una petita presentació, resum de com ha anat evolucionant la comunitat aquí a Catalunya, a Espanya, i com veiem el multilingüisme i com actuem amb ell. Bé, com comentava Enric, jo ja fa quasi 20 anys que vaig arribar aquí i recordo que en aquella època a la meva escola, que es deia Ernest Lluc, hi havia només 2 pakistanesos, jo i un altre noi que havia arribat un mes abans que jo. I no parlàvem ni català ni castellà i l'anglès que parlàvem tampoc era tan bo com per poder mantenir una conversa. I recordo que qualsevol persona que et preguntava d'on venies li deies que venies de Pakistan i feien una cara com dient s'acaba d'inventar el nom del país perquè no em sona de res. I des d'aleshores fins ara, 20 anys han passat i ara és molt habitual veure comunitat pakistanesa regentant botigues, segur que algú li ha portat en un taxi algun pakistanès, cuiners, cambrers. I aquesta era la primera generació de pakistanesos que van arribar aquí a buscar un millor futur aquí a Barcelona. Després, les següents generacions, com nosaltres, ja no estem seguint tant el camí dels nostres pares. El meu pare era camioner, jo no ho soc. Altra gent que té els pares que fan altres professions, però ara trobareu que gent com jo, que van arribar a les mateixes èpoques, alguns són politòlegs, altres són metges, oftalmòlegs, advocats, dentistes. O sigui que, a poc, cada generació rere generació, la comunitat va avançant més endavant. Clar, nosaltres no érem els primers pakistanesos que vam arribar aquí. Ja havien arribat abans altres pakistanesos, que són els que van obrir una mica la porta a la comunitat aquí a Catalunya. I pel que ens consta, els primers pakistanesos que van arribar aquí van ser cap als anys 80-90 i eren pocs, una desena. I sobretot van començar a venir més cap als anys 92 i així, amb els Jocs Olímpics, que és quan hi havia més oportunitats de feina aquí. Llavors aquests pakistanesos van estar molts anys vivint aquí, un d'ells era el meu pare, llavors cap als anys 2000 i escaig, que és quan va començar el procés de reagrupació familiar, la cosa que va fer que nosaltres i molta gent com jo en aquella època arribéssim aquí a Barcelona. El perfil de la comunitat pakistanesa és divers pel que fa a l'edat. La majoria són gent d'entre 30 i 50 anys. No hi ha gaire gent que tingui edat de jubilat, és una cosa curiosa, però suposo que a poc aniran jubilant-se també. I pel que fa al gènere, doncs és una comunitat molt masculinitzada. És tot un tema de processos migratoris que fa que els homes surtin primer de casa a buscar-se la vida i després reagrupant la família. I també, i així no és per fer una crítica a la llei d'estrangeria, no vull ficar-me en temes polítics, però també hi ha certs impediments que dificulten una mica el procés de reagrupació aquí a Catalunya. Després, el Pakistan és un país molt divers tant lingüísticament, com ja veureu, i tant ètnicament. Però aquesta diversitat ètnica i lingüística del país d'origen no es reflecteix aquí a Catalunya. De fet, aquí més del 90% dels pakistanesos que viuen aquí provenen d'una sola província de Pakistan, que és el Punjab, que no és la província més gran, però sí la més poblada, i en general és la província que emet més migració cap a països europeus o Estats Units. I aquí a Catalunya no és una excepció. Més del 90% de gent és de Punjab i més concretament del nord de Punjab. I, de fet, tinc molta gent del meu districte, del meu poble aquí, o sigui que molta gent ve del Punjab. Després, no sé si coneixeu molts pakistanesos, però el tema de llengües és una cosa molt present. O sigui, de petit ja creixem parlant dos idiomes. Una que és la llengua materna, que acostuma a ser la llengua regional. Cada província té la seva pròpia i dintre de cada província hi ha més d'una. I després a l'escola ens ensenyen l'urdú, que és la llengua de tot el país, que és el que utilitzem per comunicar-nos, per exemple, amb ells, que no parlen el punjabi, però en canvi sí que parlen urdú i per tant ens podem comunicar. Després també ens ensenyen en anglès, per tant estem acostumats a l'alfabet llatí i com que sabeu que som un país musulmà, per tant els pares estan sempre molt preocupats que sàpiguem llegir el Corà, llavors també ens ensenyen a llegir l'àrab. Per tant, de petit ja estem acostumats a estar en contacte amb mínim 2, 3 o 4 i fins i tot 5 idiomes. Això ja depèn una mica també de la zona d'on provinguis. Si vens de la ciutat de Karachi, doncs és possible que estiguis en contacte amb 10 idiomes, perquè és una ciutat que atrau molta mà d'obra d'altres regions, per tant es concentren molts perfils ètnics allà, per tant pots estar en contacte amb més de 10 idiomes en un sol lloc. Què està passant a Catalunya amb la població pakistanesa? Aquí, si haguéssim de fer un perfil, n'hi ha dos perfils. Hi ha un perfil que és gent que ve, diguem-ne, a l'edat escolar, i després hi ha un altre perfil que és la gent que ve a l'edat escolar. Llavors, els que venen a l'edat no escolar tenen una barrera important que és l'idioma. Costa molt aprendre l'idioma, a més, si has d'enviar diners a Pakistan, has de buscar la feina, no tens papers. Llavors la gent està ja tan, diguem-ne, ocupada amb els seus propis problemes que l'idioma ja queda com en segon pla. Però en canvi, la gent que sí que arriba a l'edat d'escolarització té l'oportunitat d'aprendre el català i castellà a l'escola. Llavors, què passa quan els nens aprenen diversos idiomes a la vegada? Jo me'n recordo quan la meva germana i jo ens portem 15 anys de diferència i el meu pare, com que estava malalt, llavors jo feia una mica del seu pare. Llavors anava a parlar amb els tutors i així. I llavors me'n recordo que una vegada em va trucar la tutora i em va dir que havia de parlar amb la meva germana en català a casa, perquè així no el perdés durant l'estiu. I jo li vaig dir, però la meva mare em diu que li parli en urdú i el punjabi perquè no el perdi. Llavors, aquesta mena de conflictes, bueno, no conflictes, però dilemes que surten quan tu vens d'un perfil que parles molts idiomes. Llavors, quin idioma ha de tenir preferència? Llavors, al final, el que vam acabar de decidir és que jo parlaria català amb la meva germana i la meva mare ja li parlaria el punjabi i l'altra germana li parlaria l'urdu. I al final hem aconseguit que ella acabi parlant 5 idiomes entre tots nosaltres. Llavors, jo de vegades intento parlar amb ella en punjabi o en urdu i a ella no li surt, perquè ella m'ha conegut sempre en català, per tant, em parla sempre en català. Llavors, clar, és un tema... Clar, la globalització, diguem-ne, econòmica, social i política i en tots els sentits el que està fent és això, no? Que convisquin moltes diversitats junts i llavors sortint aquesta mena de dilemes de com gestionem el multilingüisme, a qui li donem importància, a qui li donem prioritat. Llavors és un tema que suposo que després en el debat també sortirà, així que jo de moment no dic la meva opinió. I bé, no vull allargar-me massa, em sembla que m'havia dit 15-20 minuts, 10-15 minuts. Bé, m'agradaria felicitar-vos una altra vegada per el premi que heu tingut i moltes gràcies per convidar-me i espero haver sigut d'utilitat per donar-vos una mica d'informació sobre la comunitat. Moltes gràcies.
Bé, agraïm a Hamza Ali Rajà les seves paraules. Tindrem oportunitat segur de fer-li preguntes al llarg del col·loqui. Voldríem donar també la benvinguda a continuació a Maya Hemlani. No sé si la tenim a punt en aquest moment, sí? Sí, Maya? Maya Hemlani David, és un plaer comptar avui amb la teva presència per explicar-nos els motius pels quals vas presentar la candidatura d'IBT al Premi Linguapax i la vàlua de les seves iniciatives. T'agraïm que hagis acceptat la invitació a dir aquestes paraules. La Maya és professor Maya...
Good evening to everybody. Good evening to my friends in Linguapax and good evening to the winners of the Linguapax Award and to all present. I want to share with you the reasons why I chose IBT, Idara Baraya Talib Taraki, in short IBT, as in my view, I had several reasons, and I would like to share these reasons with you. As you know, it's a non-government, non-profit organization. It was established in 2007 to bring about sustainable and integrated development of the ethno-linguistic minorities in a certain part of Pakistan, specifically northern Pakistan. Its head office is located in a small town, Bahrain, in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa or KP province of Pakistan. So let's move on to my reasons for nominating IBT for the Linguapax Award. First of all, as an educationist and a linguist, I liked their literacy approach. IBT launched a project 1 year after they were formed. So in 2008, they formed a project known as the Multilingual Education Project in Bahrain, in the SWAT. And this project actually focused not only on children, but also on adults. And that's good because you are killing two birds with one stone. So the children and the adults were being taught to learn and use their mother tongue. And then this training actually helped them, facilitated their learning other languages which are important in Pakistan, Urdu and English. So it was a bridging between mother tongue and other tongues. By teaching literacy skills to children and adults, the IBT enabled both the children and the adults to read and write, and they, with the help of you said the Americans, they focused on female education literacy. And that was interesting because mothers are so important in the upbringing of their children. So this project a lot of women, in fact, 50 women education centers with more than 2,000 adult illiterate women were established to make them literate in their mother tongue. And I think that's very good, because if the mothers don't use the language, then no point just teaching the children. So they focused on both mothers and children in the mother tongue Torwali. So this enabled the local women to understand not only literacy, but also numeracy, and they could understand labels on medicine, so they wouldn't give the wrong medicine to their family members, the expiry dates on medicines, the expiry dates on food items, and they could also then teach their children in their homes. So this project also sensitized the woman on the importance of education. Sessions regarding local culture, traditions, cleanliness, personal hygiene, and environment were also part of the project. So that's interesting, the marriage of literacy, language-related, numeracy, traditions, and also issue of cleanliness and personal hygiene. So more and more adults and children started going to such schools. And I think that was one of the major reasons I thought they were doing such good work. But in addition to the literacy programs, they needed books. So IBT published trilingual, 3 languages, Torwali, Urdu, and English. They couldn't ignore Urdu, sort of the national language, and English, a language used by many elite classes in Pakistan. And instead of only books, they also released a musical CD, DVD of traditional and modern tunes and music. So I think this marriage of books and CDs with music, it helped the community come together. And I think it was mentioned earlier by the regional minister about identity. So the issue of identity with literacy, with music, all came together to build culture and identity. And in effect then, socioeconomic development, educational and socioeconomic development. The third reason I think they deserve this award, and the reason I nominated them was because they also educated people of that area to go around to record history, to preserve and document the language, but also the history of the community, to give a sense of importance of who they were, their history, their culture, and this was all documented. So in a way, it gave hope to this very minority, vulnerable community in Swat and the other areas of northern Pakistan. It's a region which has been under constant threat of fundamentalism. And so it gave hope to the people of the region. And hope is so important. With hope, you're willing to learn. You're willing to learn language, use language, be proud of yourself, of your identity. And IBT focused on inclusiveness, democracy, and most important, I think, community participation. The focus was equality and education for all. So this is also important because you focus not only on literacy, but traditions and norms which were being threatened by fundamentalism. So this found its way in the mission of the work of IBT. I come to the last 2 points. One of them is capacity building. So this region has not received due focus from the provincial government. So IBT then actually focused on the people of this region to help them to be more developed, to equip them with skills of leadership of management. And then these trained members were then the catalysts who conducted surveys and collected important data that could be used to understand the needs of the people living in the region, and then thinking about how they could help the people of the region. So the building of the capacity, it's not directly related to language and literacy and numeracy, but it's indirectly related to it. And finally, IBT's role in rehabilitation services. So when this region, sometimes they have floods, just like we are experiencing in Malaysia right now, and people are rallying around. So IBT, with its group of people, rallied around to help the people who were displaced because of floods and things like that. And again, it's not directly related to literacy, but it's so important to help people who are affected by natural disasters. In a way, it's ecology of linguistics, it's eco-linguistics. So in summary, IBT has rendered services by one, revitalizing the Torwali language and culture. It has propagated the value of peace, democracy, and more inclusiveness to counter fundamentalism in the region. It has increased the literacy rate, both focusing on children and adults, and focusing on the woman in the development process to make progress sustainable. They also trained many personnel who then became the leaders who contributed and served the local communities during natural disasters. So, in short, IBT's educational and social and capacity building work on the Torwali language and culture of the people in the Swat Valley area has helped in the emancipation of this minority linguistic community in these areas. Language, after all, matters for development and peace. So that's the connection between literacy, development, peace, equality, and fighting against fundamentalism. And I thought this is important. They were not just looking at language, but they were marrying the many variables that were related to developing minority, to date marginalized communities in that region. I would like to also, at this point, thank the two people who helped in the and endorsed my nomination. One of them is Associate Professor Dr. Ahmad Mahbub from the University of Sydney, Australia, and the other is Associate Professor Dr. Manan from Nazarbayev University in Kazakhstan. They endorsed my nomination, and I would like to thank them too. And most of all, I would like to congratulate both Zubair Torwali and Aftab Ahmad. Thank you. I hope these reasons helped the jury and the committee to make a decision. Thank you.
Moltes gràcies, Maia, per aquestes aclaridores explicacions sobre IBT que ens ajuden a entendre l'abast i la rellevància de les tasques d'aquesta organització. Moltes gràcies també per venir de tu, una persona amb una dilatada carrera acadèmica i amb una dedicació molt exitosa a la sociolingüística que seguim. Gràcies per haver-ne proposat la candidatura en el premi. Recordem també que va ser Premi Tu Linguapax l'any 2007. Ho recordem amb carinyo. Bé, després d'haver escoltat Hamza Ali i Maya Kemlami, procedirem al lliurament del Premi Linguapax 2021.
Gràcies, Enric. Si voleu baixar, ara demanarem als dos premiats que ens acompanyin aquí davant i a la consellera. can come. You have to. Congratulations for the award. You can take it. Ara els hi donarem la paraula amb ells. Després de les explicacions de la Maia, no cal que us els presenti, havia preparat una breu introducció, simplement els demanaré que seguin aquí a la taula. Zubair Touarli ens farà un retrat breu de quina és la situació lingüística i la dimensió lingüística del Pakistan i especialment de la regió on ells treballen, i Ahbad Amrat, si ho dic bé, Aftat, ens explicarà amb més detall els projectes que tiren endavant des de la seva institució i ens donarà unes quantes idees pel debat posterior. Thank you very much. Yours is the floor. Please, you start first and then you take the floor. Okay, thank you very much.
No. Okay, fine. Good evening. Khar sadai bad. I greeted you in my native language, Torwali, which means come with peace, come with dignity. Her Excellency, the Minister, Regional Minister of Catalan, President Linguapax, the Linguapax team, other friends, academia, and my friends and colleagues who are attending this session online. It is indeed a great pleasure and immense spirit and encouragement for us and our team IBT to have been recognized internationally by such a prestigious organization as Linguapax is. And I am grateful and thankful to Dr. Maya Khimlani, my friend, other friends, Dr. Ahmar Mahbub, Dr. Manan, and all other supporters who have endorsed the nominations and supported us in our work. I think I had a presentation, but there's no time to do that now. You know, my country, Pakistan, is one of the most beautiful countries in the world. The second highest mountain of the world is in Pakistan, and it is in the region which we call Northern Pakistan. And by Northern Pakistan, we mean the north, extreme north of Pakistan, where these high peaks are, the region of Gilgit-Baltistan, the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, Khimlani for you, Pakhtunkhwa. It is the northwestern province of Pakistan. As Hamza, my friend, has described Pakistan very well before you. You know that Pakistan is as beautiful and as diverse in terms of culture, in terms of biodiversity, in terms of ecology, in terms of languages, in terms of people. There are over 76 languages spoken in Pakistan. Only 6 of them, Punjabi, Pashto, Sindhi, Balochi, Brahvi, and to some extent Hinko and Saraiki are known to many of the people, but rest of the 68 languages are lesser known, and they are facing the threat of extinction and endangerment. Many of these languages, about half of these 68 languages are spoken in northern Pakistan. Northern Pakistan, as I told you, the upper Khyber Pakhtunkhwa in the region of Gilgit-Baltistan. And this region is one of the most polyglot in the world because of its linguistic density and diversity. In one region, Chitral, there are 14 languages spoken, one small district. In my district, Swat, 7 languages are spoken, and Kohistan to the east of Swat is Kohistan region, 5 languages are spoken, and Gilgit-Baltistan, 7 languages are spoken. And Pashto, the second largest language of Pakistan, is spoken in the south of this region, and that is why we often see that Pashto is also one of the dominating languages in the region. It has been encroaching the areas, especially the south of this region. And Swat, as Dr. Maya told, was recently home to many bad things in terms of terrorism, extremism. It was hit by those man-made calamities and then by floods. But it is one of the most beautiful regions in the entire Asia. It is often described as Switzerland of Asia. So our primary work is focused on in Swat, but you know that we are all for the ethno-linguistic minorities of northern Pakistan. And we understand that these people are historically brutalized, socially marginalized, politically less represented, and economically very, very poor. That is why they deserve more attention, not only from the people, but also from the government as well as from the international communities. We are glad that since 1990 and especially 2000, when this new third millennium began, work on the preservation and promotion of these languages started with the support of some internationally recognized linguists, researchers, and organizations. And of course, due attention was given by UNESCO and other multilateral organizations. And since then, we saw some improvement in the revitalization and promotion of the languages of northern Pakistan. These languages are mostly Indo-Aryan, of Indo-European family, then Indo-Aryan. In the subcategory is Dardic, but in the region, there are some Iranian languages as well. You know, of course, you might have heard the name Kalasha, the ethnic religious minority living in Chitral, in this part of northern Pakistan, and many others. So these languages and the people, when some through a long history of colonization, not only from the East India Company, but long before that, when colonization came from Central Asia and again from the British Island, these communities were brutalized, were forcefully converted to other religions, and they left, many of them left their languages, religions, cultures, and traditions. And they forgot their past. And thus they felt they were in a, sorry, they were in identity crisis. They didn't know who they were. They were usually termed as guest communities by the dominant communities in the region. Although the dominant communities they came very late to the region, and these communities were very indigenous to the region. But because of the long history of oppression and repression, they lost their memories, traditions, their past histories. And and as I told you that after 2000 CE, when some attention was given to to this reducing, to this depleting indigenous wisdom and indigenous knowledge, some work has been done and is going to be done. And IBT, our organization, Idara Baraye Talim wa Tarakki, Institute for Education and Development, is one of the organizations which have been doing such work in northern Pakistan. And as this region, as I told you, is home to 30 languages, so people are very multilingual. In Swat, for instance, a common Torwali person can speak 3 languages at least. Native language Torwali, Pashto, Urdu, the national language of Pakistan, and often a neighboring language, for instance, Gauri, a neighboring language, or another neighboring language, Khowar. So from 3 to 5 languages is spoken by an ordinary northern Pakistani guy. So that is and this brings these people to a cohesive livelihood. They live in harmony, they live in peace, and in a multilingual world. But there are forces, which do try to cut this multilingualism and separate those people by forcing other narratives, fundamentalist narratives, which are so dangerous to peace and harmony and communal harmony. My friend Hamza told you about the particular cultural escape of Pakistan, the cultural landscape of Pakistan. So we have multiple narratives and forces which are attacking these communities and the harmony and peace they have. And IBT, in its humble work, has been trying to repulse those forces by reaching out to the communities, by networking these ethno-linguistic communities, by making them, as Maya told, by building their capacity to communicate, to write, to do research on their histories, on their traditions, on their languages. So we have been doing a very minor, humble work, and we are glad that this humble work, though we call it humble because we have still miles to go on. We have still to do a lot of work as the struggles is going on. And as we know that these communities deserve more. And along with IBT, we have a number of partner organizations and the communities. And as I told you, the people are very socially empowered, so they are networked, they have formed organizations for their own without any support from the state, and they have now regaining their identity, reclaiming their own traditions and cultures, and that is empowering them. And we think that language does not work in isolation. When you work on revitalizing a language, so we need to have a holistic approach, integrate it socially, culturally, economically, and even politically with all major issues. I am again very thankful to Linguapax Language for Peace, I think. Yeah. And for my supporters and for my colleague and especially team IBT, which has been doing so marvelous work. So on the team, we have more than 12 core team people, and I congratulate them all, and I thank you, Linguapax. Gracia.
Thank you very much. Before starting my few words, let me thank Her Excellency Minister of Catalonia and Linguapax for providing this opportunity and for recognizing our work. It is indeed a very emotional moment for us to see us on this international forum and to be recognized. So let me congratulate my Torwali friends, which I can see on the screen. Some are there, my friends and other partners who are part of this journey with us throughout all these years. So let me thank you and congratulate them all. I can see Fazal Hadi, Rahim Sabir, my brother Nisar Akash Torwali. So chair Bumarik Totolai, Kame Torwali Abne Mesadmi Mobodi, me screen zed, the Tatolai chair Bumarik, Tunwaja de Mumkinudu, Tune award to Pakistan se award to Motul Torwalia se award to Epera Bitoe chair Bumarik. So I had also a presentation, but due to less time, I would not be able to go for that. So I will be discussing some of the initiatives IBT has taken so far since 2007. Some of them were already discussed by Maya and Zubair. So IBT was established in 2007, and the impetus for establishing this organization was since our childhoods, we would always face some kind of biases in our schools, in our bazaars. We would always be mocked by some dominant communities that we are people whose language is not written. There is no writing system in our language, and we would be mocked. And I still remember that some of our teachers would mock us that you people are speaking a language which sounds like you put some pebbles in a big tin. So it sounds like the sound of those pebbles in a tin.
Hubble bubble.
Yeah, hubble bubble. So these things were in our mind from our childhood, and we wanted to do something for our community, for ourselves, because we would always witness that our people, when they are in other communities, when they are in mainstream Pakistan, they would always hide their identity because of the continuous mocking. So in 2007, me and Zubair, we started a little organization, and the primary focus at that time was to work for the promotion, for the preservation of our mother tongue Torwali. So initially, we developed orthography for Torwali language, because before that there was no orthography for Torwali. So and after developing orthography, we established mother tongue-based multilingual schools with the support of SIL International, and those schools are still running. And initially, the school was in the main town of Bahrain, where we live, but now we have 8 such schools. Over time, we expanded the scope of our work. We not only started work on Torwali, but other neighboring languages and communities in northern Pakistan, especially in Gilgit-Baltistan and in Chitral. So we started working there. We have taken a number of initiatives so far for the social and economic uplift of not only Torwali people, but all other ethno-marginalized communities in northern Pakistan. So from day one, it is our commitment, it is our dedication that we would work for all those lesser known communities who are struggling on every front in those mountainous regions. Our area is not that much developed when we talk about infrastructure of education, infrastructure of roads. So all these things are very underdeveloped there. So our main focus is to empower those communities, to demand their rights, to make them empower, and to include them in mainstream Pakistan, to make them developed. So for that, our team is working, and we are doing our initiatives whatever possible in our capacity. As Zubair mentioned, that we are running schools in Bahrain and adjacent areas. So for that, it was important that the mothers of those children should get educated, because if mother is not educated, if mother hasn't the awareness about the importance of education, she cannot send her children to a school. So we started adult literacy projects in the community. As Khilwani mentioned, that more than 2,000 women were educated in the area, and we also started work on cultural component. In 2011, we ran a cultural festival in Bahrain, which was attended by more than 10,000 people, and it was first of its kind in the community, in the area, soon after militancy, 2007 and till 2009. It witnessed militancy in Swat Valley, and it was very hard at that time to start or to run such an event in an area like Bahrain, which has suffered a lot due to militancy. So it was a huge success for us to conduct that musical and cultural festival in Swat. So the struggle continues, and we are hopeful that we will not yield and we will not surrender, and we will continue our struggle for the rights of our community, for the rights of all those communities who are marginalized, whose voices are not heard. And I'm sure that one day we will be able to achieve our all goals. So let me thank you again. Let me thank you, Linguapax, for recognizing our work. And let me assure my community and all those ethno-minorities in Pakistan that our struggle continues, and we will succeed in future. So thank you very much again.
Thank you very much for your words, for your presentation. Now we are going to open the debate with the attendants. But we've finished this ceremony of giving the award. Per tant, acomiadem la consellera que ha de marxar. Li donem les gràcies una vegada més, també al secretari general del departament que ens ha volgut acompanyar avui també. Moltes gràcies per la vostra presència. Espero que us hagi servit per conèixer una mica més la nostra feina, per imaginar altres possibles col·laboracions i, per tant, espero que seguirem en contacte i podrem seguir treballant plegats. Moltes
Great,
gràcies.
thank you.
I ara
Thank
dono
you.
la paraula a l'Enric Boix. Ara vinc. Et dono la paraula a l'Emili Boix, que serà el qui conduirà el debat.
Well, we'll begin a dialogue between the public and you all. Comencem aquest diàleg. Tenim una oportunitat única de conèixer les comunitats amb què ells treballen i de conèixer el Pakistan, que és un dels gegants sociolingüístics del món. Recordem que té 220 milions d'habitants. Deu ser el segon país musulmà del món, em sembla que el primer és Indonèsia. Per tant, tenim una oportunitat de dialogar. It's an opportunity to dialogue and know more your country and your communities. Per tant, donem la paraula a qualsevol persona que vulgui contribuir al debat.
Any questions, any queries are welcome.
Una paraula demanada. Endavant, go ahead.
Bueno, suposo que teniu traducció, no? Vale. En català. Les llengües, heu dit que hi ha com 30 llengües. Quina és la llengua predominant primer en la vostra zona? I segon, hi ha alguna mena de parentiu entre les llengües que hi ha en la zona?
Shukriya, Hamza. Thank you, Hamza. A very good question. The predominant language in Swat is, of course, Pashto. This Swat Valley population is 2.5 million. So we are just 100,000 people and 140,000, but 40,000 people are living in the cities. And Pashto is the lingua franca of this Swat Valley, while in the Chetral, in the northern part, the lingua franca, in Chetral there are 14 languages, so the Kawar, the main language of Chetral is the lingua franca of that region, but Pashto in the south is also the predominant language, and Urdu is now replacing Pashto as well. While in Gilgit-Baltistan, the situation is a little bit different. People of the northern parts, they don't understand Pashto. They use Urdu as a lingua franca between them, but Shina is the main language many people can understand and can speak in Gilgit-Baltistan. But the lingua franca, when these communities speak to each other, so they use Urdu.
Okay. Any other? Thanks. Any other question? Més paraules demanades. Una allà. There.
Thank you. Well, I have a lot of questions, but just let's start with some. So you mentioned that you had to write rules to describe your language in a written form, because the language Torwali was not written before you started working in this initiative in 2007. Is that right? So that must have been a huge work to try to fix a writing system, a grammar too. So is Torwali alive in the families? The mothers speak Torwali to their children. Are books starting to being written in Torwali now, like I don't know, children stories or something like that? Do you see a future for Torwali in this modern world of globalization and communication across the whole world? So how do you see the future of Torwali in all this?
Well, there is a danger of globalization on each and everything. So you have a very valid point that in this globalized era, how would we manage to retain or preserve the language, which is spoken by barely 120 or 140,000 people. So it's very hard. Initially, as I mentioned, that Torwali was totally oral. There was some kind of writing system, but that was not scientifically or linguistically valid. So we designed the orthography by in line with linguistic rules, and we developed and designed the orthography after it was approved by the community after several consultations with the community. So after approving the orthography, we started publishing books. So the initial books which were published were curriculum books for the school I mentioned, for the MTB MLE school. So those were course books. Zubair will now show you the books. They are here. Besides those books, we also started publishing general books. We started magazines, quarterly magazines in Torwali language. We have recently published books in Torwali poetry. We have published books on oral folk tales. There is a book on daily usage conversation. I myself have written a trilingual dictionary, as Maya mentioned. So I am the author. It is in Torwali, Urdu, and English, and it's first of its kind in the history of Torwali language. So initially, there was no tradition of reading Torwali language, but since now there is material available to the community, for the community, so now they can easily read and write their language. Even we have developed a keyboard with the help of Google. We have designed a keyboard for smartphones. So now we can see Torwali people easily can write digitally their language on social media platforms. They can now send text to each other on mobile phones. So they are now getting used to reading their language and writing their language. And there is this threat of globalization. We don't want to compete with any language. And it's not possible for us to compete with any language. But what we want is that every language has some indigenous wisdom, indigenous knowledge, and it is, as human beings, it is our right that we need to preserve that indigenous wisdom, that indigenous knowledge for future generations. That's
Okay.
what I think.
The second part, you see, some of the books we have brought for Linguapax library. The script is Arabic, but for your record, all these books are in Torwali except this one. This is in Urdu, English, short profile of IBT. So people are writing their language, they are writing, they're recording, and you mentioned globalization, this digital media. I think it is an opportunity as well as a threat. How you take it. We know that the digital media doesn't have much space for the endangered minority languages, but still the YouTube, the video format has the capacity to include all these languages. And as Aftab mentioned, so we can also work with Google to develop keyboards for social media and things like that. And we use even WhatsApp, the WhatsApp. You know, we, as I told that we are in the north, a larger proportion of Torwali people living in the cities. So now through WhatsApp, we have made groups of these people, so connecting each other. So there are dangers, but we are hopeful that we can use the digital modern world to include our languages. And recently, we have approached Apple company to include the characters of Torwali, and they included all but one, except one, and the iPhone keyboard. So there are opportunities and there are challenges. But I hope as people, when people get a sense of identity, who they are, to whom they belong, and to which land they belong to, so then they get embedded, they get very passionate about their language, their culture, their traditions. So we think we should all include all these, the identity, the socio-political aspect of language revitalization as well. There are online questions.
Hi ha una paraula. Endavant, que no ho veia. No. Vol intervenir? Ahead.
Am I allowed to speak?
Tanya.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay,
hear
thank
you.
you. Okay, thank you so much. Am I allowed to speak now?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. So first of all, I would like to congratulate IBT, Professor Maya Khemlani David, Mr. Zubair Torwali, and Mr. Aftab. I'm sorry, I couldn't remember the name. I'm so sorry about that. So all of you have done a very praiseworthy work, and this is so important for minority language maintenance and revitalization. So since you have been dealing with the orthography development, I'm just going to point to that issue about your contribution in orthography development. What kind of challenges did you have to face during when you started developing the script for writing out the language, and how did you come to terms with those challenges? So I'd be very interested about knowing about this issue. How did you solve those problems?
Tanya Rahman, thank you for your question. Yeah, you are right that when it comes to developing an orthography for a minority language, so we have to look internally as well as externally. Internally, how the language behaves and how the linguistic patterns it has. But externally, socio-cultural aspects of. So we initially we liked to develop a Latinized kind of orthography for our language, but given the socio-cultural political situation of our country, because most of our people, almost everybody in our area is Muslim, and he or she is a little bit familiar with the Holy Quran. So it means there is a ground, a literacy ground, reading Holy Quran, and so it is also a form of literacy. And again, the national language of Pakistan is Urdu, and that's also written in Arabic script. So we chose the Arabic script for our language, and though it posed some challenges, especially for writing the special sounds, phonetic, special characters, but for those sounds, special characters were made. Four special characters are there, and we one of our mentors is online present here, Dr. Wayne Lunsford. So he and other colleagues helped how to linguistically analyze the orthographical issues and phonemics and phonetics. So that helped us to develop the orthography in Urdu-based script, and it worked well because many people are already literate in Urdu or in reading Arabic. So it connects those people, the already literate people. So only 4 characters are different, and they can have an ease to write and read the language. So these were internal challenges and external. So external, you cannot do it in isolation without looking at the socio-cultural, political situation of your country or where your community is, and internal challenges, how the language behaves. And the language is, Indo-Aryan, Indo-European group, Indo-Aryan. So we love to develop a Latinized kind of orthography because Arabic-based orthography is very discursive, and it often creates problem and this digital world is not friendly with Arabic script, as I would say. So writing on social media, and it poses some challenges. Even keyboard, making keyboard for writing our languages is not. But there are some good faith-based organizations like SIL International and UNESCO and people associated with those organizations. They developed some good keyboards for these languages to write the languages in the Urdu-based script.
Thanks. Anybody else here or online? I don't know. Is somebody else?
I have more questions. Okay. It's interesting to see how multilingual your region is, and how multilingual is that part of the world, the whole Pakistan. And I always wonder whether multilingualism it can be maintained through time, or at the end there's just one language that takes it all. I know that during centuries it has been multilingual. I wonder whether in the 21st century it can still be.
Yeah, sometimes when your language is put against a dominant language, and people call it multilingualism. So it is really a great challenge because your language then finishes and the other languages dominates, and people call it multilingualism. Your language borrows words, lexicon, and different concept from the dominant language. I think that is a phenomenon in our area, but what by multilingualism I meant in that particular region, because these minority languages, the people of these minority languages, they speak the languages of one another. For instance, in Swat, the Torwali can speak some of the Torwali can speak Gauri language, neighboring minority language. The Gauri people can speak this language. But when it comes to Pashto or Urdu, so you are right that very often we see that Pashtuns or Urdu speakers or my brothers Punjabis, they don't want to learn our languages. So for them, multilingualism is to shift to their languages. You are right. We feel we are very well aware of that, and that's why we try to convince people to use the words of their own languages instead of borrowing words from other languages. For instance, if your language has words for anything or for any concept, you must use that instead of using a word from any other language. And people are doing that. And for that, for when we, for instance, this is a Torwali poetry translated into Urdu. So when we translate stuff from other languages to our language, so we face multiple challenges. For instance, some words are much difficult to be translated. But what we do, we are unfortunately ill-educated. I would say ill-educated means we are not educated in language. We got education in Urdu. So Urdu and English. So people tend to use words from these languages instead of their own. But when we face these challenges, how to find an exact word in our language for a word or a concept from another language, so we directly go to the elders, the monolingual or bilingual elders, illiterate people, and they describe everything in their language, and we record that, and that helps us to maintain the original language.
Let me add just a short question. Urdu is the national language, even though it represents just 10% of the population, more or less.
Yeah.
And then is there a tendency to shift towards Urdu in the family? Is the language lost in the family between parents and daughters and sons?
Yeah, you are right that Urdu is the mother tongue of hardly 9% of population in Pakistan. And it is a national language, a lingua franca, a language of wider communication. No, in some, Hamza will testify, in some urban Punjabi cities, people shift to Urdu and they don't want to speak Punjabi with their children. In our case, I think, we have a small population, so I know exactly 3 families who love to speak Urdu with their children, but when their children try to speak Urdu, so it becomes an interesting language, a mixture of Urdu and Torwali. So, and it is unfortunate that we have our national language, a minority language imposed by some pre-partition period.
Sometimes it also becomes the notion to look or to seem cool. I mean, we have witnessed people, we have seen people who irrelevantly use words from other languages like Urdu or English, just because to look cool, to sound cool. So we need to deconstruct these constructs that using words from other languages or dominant languages isn't that cool. So if you speak your language, if you use words from your own languages, that can be cool. It's not important that using words of other languages makes you cool.
Amrita, there's
Una
paraula
paraula.
demanada.
Perdó.
Amrita Avi, please, can you...
Amrita Abi, go ahead.
Hello, am I audible?
Oh,
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, congratulations, Zubair Torwari. This was a very, very commendable and job that you did. I know that region very well. It must be very, very courageous and bold move for you and your group to undertake the kind of project that you have taken. My heart goes out to you. And along with me, there are many of my students and other fellow colleagues who would like to congratulate you to win the Linguapax Award. The region that you have worked on has gone through a lot of turmoil, not for thousands of years, but at least for hundreds of years. And this kind of turmoility or the pain, the anguish, and the anger of the community must have reflected in their oral tradition, in their songs, in their stories, in their fables. I would like to know, have you tried to preserve the oral tradition in orality? Because I know that it is, most of the linguists try to document everything in written form, and so have you done, giving them literacy and education. But along with that, since the oral tradition has a longer and stronger sustenance power, I just would like to know, have you been able to preserve and contain their oral tradition?
Oh, very nice, Anvita, to hear you. Yeah, you are very right. We have been, one of our main jobs is to document the oral traditions, the oral history, the folk tales, the mythologies, uh, and publish those in book form. So you see, this is one of the book poetry books. It has 400 couplets, poetic couplets, and out of these 400 couplets, 300 couplets are written by women poets, and this is a revolt against men's domination, a very feminist kind of poetry it is. You are very right. And there are many tales, many folk tales, and many oral histories, and we are constantly documenting those. And sometimes we publish those in books form for the community. You see, this is another book. That is you see, a Kashmala. It is a romance epic, a poetic form. So it is a story of a man in a dream like. So it is also, and the theme is very, very revolt against the forces which control your artistic expressions, your inner being. So that we are very well aware of this aspect, because and even as I told you, this identity, Torwali identity, people didn't know about that. But in some ancient poetic forms, we find couplets which use the word Torwali or Torwal for the area. And otherwise, for the last 2 centuries, people use Kohistani for their identity, or a general identity imposed, given by the colonizers, I mean by the dominant communities. But in the oral traditions, we find similar such things, the identity and artistic things, and many stories are there which are really which can be traced back to their religion, original religion. So you are very right. There are, and still, and recently we have seen many younger poets, and both girls and boys, they are writing. They are saying good poetry, resistance poetry. We can progressive resistance poetry.
Molt bé,
Nice
molt fine.
to
There
know
are
that.
still 2 questions. Encara hi ha 2 preguntes, una davant i una darrere. Vostè mateixa? Go ahead.
Bueno, jo més que fer una pregunta voldria complementar la pregunta anterior que havies fet sobre la llengua urdú i tot plegat. A Pakistan ens està passant el mateix que fa uns anys va passar aquí en català. O sigui que la gent de les zones urbanes pensa que és una llengua del poble. Llavors tendeixen a abandonar-la i intentar adoptar l'urdú. Jo me'n recordo que quan érem petits i un veí del poble s'havia casat amb una noia de la ciutat i quan ella va tenir el seu nen ens obligava a parlar-li en urdú perquè no volia que parlés el punjabi. Però com que l'entorn en general parla el punjabi a les zones rurals, ell sense voler ja va aprendre el punjabi. al final l'entorn és el que fa que tu acabis aprenent la llengua que hi ha a l'entorn, no? Llavors ara el que està passant és que l'elit aquesta que vol deixar les llengües maternes, que són les punjabi o sindhi o altres, volien passar-se a l'urdú. Llavors ara el que està passant és que volen deixar l'urdú i estan passant tots a l'anglès. Llavors ara et trobaràs a les ciutats constantment parlant gent pakistanesa entre ells en anglès. Llavors molts cops és com et quedes dient però si tenim les nostres pròpies llengües, per què parleu anglès? Doncs això és el que jo li dic el síndrome d'excolònia, que al final ens agraden més les coses de la metròpoli que les nostres mateixes.
Molt bé, gràcies. Hi havia una paraula, si li passeu el micròfon.
Gràcies. Els hi parlarem anglès perquè m'entenguin. I'm going to ask you in English. So, no, my question is a follow-up from the other question that we had about oral documentation. I'm wondering if you have recordings that document your language that goes, beyond written poetry. Do you document the spoken language? Do you have any recordings, podcasts to document oral traditions, normal spoken language?
Yeah. In addition to the book, we have multiple YouTube channels, and as we told that globalization has also given some opportunities, social media. So those songs or interviews or stories are archived in the Google and the YouTube channels. I have my own channels which has more than 4,000 followers, and I get it is now monetized as well. So and there are 10 or more other channels, YouTube channels, and we are happy that people before 2010, when SWAT was under the militants, music concert or smaller events were not allowed, and people have abandoned those. But after when Aftab mentioned the festival, we celebrated a festival for the first time, indigenous culture festival, not the high culture or the so-called city culture. Indigenous and traditional games, traditional music, everything. And after that, we saw that a growth of people having their own music within their guest rooms. Each house has a guest room in our culture. So in their guest room, they usually sit in the nights and they sing, they play sitar, they play rabab. These are instruments. And one of our in our office, one portion is for music. There are musical instruments, and people come and they sing, they play, and they go. And we have our good musician and singer and poet with us. So and people love to record themselves, love to and put those things on YouTube and social media. And we have also been trying to work with ELDP, the Endangered Language Documentation, the Swiss German Berlin-based program to document more and to archive more.
There is no professional setup of doing all these things. I mean, due to the increase in social media and YouTube and access to internet everywhere in the far-flung areas, in the mountains, especially younger people, they are now using this medium to record videos and to make vlogs wherever they go and put them on YouTube or social media. So in a sense, we can say that these things, recording of each and every activity, whether that is related to music, that is related to any festival or any traditional game, they do record all these things, and since everybody likes so many likes on social media, so for that they put all these things on social media and YouTube. Resultantly, this increases viewership, this increases language documentation. It supports language documentation directly or indirectly. Yeah.
Molt bé, fine. Is there anybody else? Algú més? Hi ha alguna paraula online?
Online hi ha alguna paraula?
No.
Thank you.
No, jo volia comentar una cosa que parlàvem amb ells abans de començar la sessió i que ve lligada també amb tot l'ús del social media i tot l'aprofitament de les tecnologies, i és que comentaven que tot realment és un projecte molt rodó el que estan descrivint ells, perquè comencen des d'una descripció de la llengua, des d'una transcripció cap a una llengua escrita, una educació, etc. I a més comentaven que el fet de disposar de les tecnologies, la recuperació de la llengua els ha servit per reforçar la qüestió identitària de la comunitat que parla Torvali i, a més, sent una zona del Pakistan molt poblada i que, a més, exporta molta immigració cap a altres zones del Pakistan i del món, sí que estan utilitzant les xarxes per mantenir la llengua i per mantenir la comunitat cohesionada. I em penso que, més que una pregunta, és un comentari sobre el valor d'accions, de projectes com aquests, que van més enllà del que és estrictament la llengua i el territori on es parla i que permet aquesta pervivència més enllà del que és estrictament lingüístic, sinó de mantenir la cohesió de la comunitat i de continuar-la fent créixer amb aquest tipus d'accions que es poden fer des del mateix territori o des de qualsevol altre lloc. I em penso que, si no hi ha més preguntes, doncs podríem cloure el debat aquí.
No hi ha ningú més.
Si vols fer tu, Emili, algun comentari
més? No, per part meva no. Res més. Tu, com a presidenta, et toca...
Toca cloure l'acte.
Sí.
Agraeixo la voluntat dels premiats avui d'haver pogut viatjar en aquestes condicions i d'haver pogut gaudir de les seves explicacions i de la seva presència en directe. Els felicito una vegada més per aquest reconeixement. Agraeixo les aportacions de tots els que heu estat presents avui, aquí i a través de la pantalla. I qui no hi hagi pogut ser, sapigueu que quedarà enregistrat, que hi podreu accedir des del web de Linguapax i des del web de l'IEC un temps, i per tant podreu compartir aquest debat que hem tingut amb qui us sembli interessant i continuar fent les aportacions que creieu. Moltes gràcies a tots i moltes felicitats a tots plegats perquè tots en sortim una mica savis.
Thank you very much.
Monica and other friends, if I pronounced the name correctly, if I not, please. And my many friends, they were online. I think now we feel more spirited, more encouraged, more passionate to go back, to work more, and to work differently as well, with support from very knowledgeable people like you and others. So we are very glad that our work, our small work, was recognized, acknowledged, and that is, that has put us in a way in a trouble as well, because we have to prove now, we have to go beyond that, we have to grow more. So as an Urdu poet, Allama Muhammad Iqbal said, "Maktab-e-ishq ke andaz narale hain, usko chutti na mili, jisne सबक याद किया. The traditions of the passionate school is different, unique. Those who learn the lesson will never go off. Thank you.
You have to learn more.
Oh, finally,